What if I told you that the biggest investing mistake you could make after 60 isn't what you think it is? It's not about missing the next big stock or failing to time the market perfectly. The real mistake is believing that your age has disqualified you from building real, lasting wealth. That fear, that paralyzing belief that it's too late, is costing you more than any bad investment ever could. Here's a truth that might sting a little. By the time you've reached 60, most of the dramatic decisions in your life have already been made. Your career arc is essentially written. Your family structure is established. The days of taking wild, swing-for-the-fences risks are largely behind you. And honestly, that's not just okay. It's actually your greatest advantage if you know how to use it. But before we dive deeper into why this is actually good news, let me ask you something. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from. Today, it's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Now, here's what most people over 60 don't realize about investing. The game has fundamentally changed, but not in the way you've been told. You're no longer playing offense, you're playing defense, and defense is what wins championships when it matters most. Has this ever happened to you? You watch younger investors chase cryptocurrency or the latest tech stock, and you feel like you're missing out. Like everyone else is getting rich while you're stuck on the sidelines. That feeling is actually one of the most dangerous emotions an investor over 60 can experience. And stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might completely change how you think about money in retirement. Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's longtime partner, and one of the greatest investors who ever lived, once admitted something remarkable. He said he could have been twice as rich if he hadn't made one critical mistake 50 years earlier. Think about that for a moment. Twice as rich, and this is coming from a billionaire. But here's the fascinating part. It wasn't some complex trading strategy he missed, or some exotic investment opportunity he overlooked. The lesson he learned applies directly to anyone over 60 who's serious about financial security. You see, compounding is the most powerful force in investing, but it works both ways. It multiplies your smart decisions, yes, but it also amplifies your mistakes. Every poor choice you make doesn't just cost you once, it costs you over and over again, year after year, through the power of negative compounding. And when you're 60 or older, you don't have 3 or 4 decades to recover from those mistakes. The margin for error has shrunk dramatically, which is precisely why the strategy that got you here won't be the same strategy that gets you through retirement. What you're about to learn isn't about finding the next Amazon or predicting which sectors will boom. It's about something far more valuable and far more achievable: survival and steady growth. Because after 60, survival isn't boring, it's brilliant. And the plan we're going to walk through together is designed specifically for someone who understands that protecting wealth is just as important as building it. The hidden truth about investing after 60 that almost nobody talks about is this: your entire strategy needs to flip. Think of it like switching from being a striker to being a goalkeeper. In your 20s, 30s, even your 40s, you were playing offense. You could take shots, miss wildly, and still have plenty of time to score again. But now you're the last line of defense, and your job isn't to score spectacular goals. It's to keep the ball out of your net. This mental transformation is everything, and most people resist it because it doesn't feel exciting. But excitement, my friend, is precisely what you need to avoid. Here's where things get dangerous. The moment many people hit 60, something shifts in their mindset. They look around and realize their college roommate retired with twice their nest egg. Their neighbor just bought a second home. Their brother-in-law won't stop bragging about some investment that tripled in value. Suddenly this voice creeps in. I'm behind. I need to catch up. I need to Make a big move now. This is the moment where decades of careful savings can evaporate in months. The urge to catch up, that desperate feeling that you've somehow missed your window, is one of the most lethal impulses an investor over 60 can experience. It's not about ambition or drive, it's about panic disguised as strategy. Let me share something that illustrates this perfectly. Charlie Munger tells the story of a man who had everything going for him. Ivy League education, brilliant mind, successful career, solid income. At 55, this man looked around and decided he was falling behind his peer group. So what did he do? He took his accumulated wealth and poured it into dot-com startups during the late 1990s boom. It seemed like genius at the time. Everyone was getting rich. Technology was the future. The returns looked astronomical. Then 2000 hit, and the bubble burst. By 2002, he had lost more than half of everything he'd built. The tragedy isn't just the money, it's what came after. He spent the rest of his life talking about what he almost had, trapped in the prison of regret. And here's the devastating irony that haunts this story. If he had simply done nothing dramatic, if he had just invested in boring, unsexy, reliable companies like Coca-Cola or Johnson & Johnson, he would have been absolutely fine. Not spectacularly rich, but comfortable, secure, and sleeping well at night. The impact of one wrong decision driven by envy or fear of missing out doesn't just cost you money, it costs you peace, dignity, and freedom. Now, I want to go even deeper into this because understanding why this happens is just as important as knowing that it does. Write in the comments, defense wins. If this mindset shift is starting to make sense to you, the revelation that changes everything is learning to embrace the word fine. I know it doesn't sound inspiring. Fine isn't sexy. Fine doesn't make headlines. Fine won't impress anyone at a dinner party. But fine might be the most powerful word in your investment vocabulary after 60. Think about it. When someone asks how your investments are doing and you say, fine, what you're really saying is, I'm sleeping well at night. I'm not stressed. I'm not checking my portfolio obsessively. I'm secure. That's not mediocrity. That's mastery. The boring businesses that pay consistent dividends, that grow modestly year after year, that nobody talks about because they're not exciting, those are often the smartest choices you can make. They won't turn you into a billionaire. But here's the question you need to ask yourself. Do you need to be a billionaire, or do you need to maintain your independence and dignity? Because financial independence at 65 is worth infinitely more than a risky shot at wealth that could leave you dependent on others. This brings us to a mathematical reality that most people don't want to confront, but it's essential to understand. The real enemy you're facing isn't underperformance. It's not earning 7% when you could have earned 9%. The real enemy is catastrophic loss, the kind of devastating hit that changes everything. Losing half your money at 30 is painful, but recoverable. You have 3 full decades ahead of you to rebuild, to let compounding work its magic again, to make different decisions. But losing half your money at 65, that's a completely different game. You might not even have another 30 years. Even if you do, your earning power has diminished. Your energy isn't what it was. And psychologically, the weight of that loss can be crushing. This isn't meant to scare you. It's meant to recalibrate your perspective. Every investment decision you make now needs to be filtered through this lens. What happens if this goes wrong? Can I recover? The margin for error has shrunk so dramatically that one major mistake can alter the entire trajectory of your retirement. So the transformation in mindset that needs to happen is this. Stop trying to be clever. I mean that sincerely. The goal after 60 isn't to be the smartest person in the room, to outsmart the market, to find some brilliant angle that nobody else has seen. The goal is simpler and far more challenging. Avoid being stupid. And let me tell you, avoiding stupidity is a full-time job in today's world. Every single day, you're bombarded with opportunities to make foolish decisions, slick salespeople with can't-miss investments, newsletter subscriptions promising insider secrets, friends sharing hot tips they heard from someone who knows someone. Your task, your only real task, is to develop the discipline and wisdom to recognize these traps and walk away. Being clever works occasionally, when conditions are right, when luck is on your side. But not being stupid, that works consistently, reliably, every single time. Write in the comments, boring wins, if you're starting to see why simplicity beats complexity at this stage of life. Charlie Munger had this brilliant way of thinking about risk that cut straight to the heart of smart investing. He would say, "All I want to know is where I'm going to die, so I'll never go there." It sounds morbid at first, but it's actually genius. Instead of asking, "What could make you rich?" you flip the question, "What could absolutely destroy you?" Once you identify those landmines, you simply don't go near them. Ever. For anyone over 60, there are 3 clear paths to financial destruction that you need to avoid like the plague. First is leverage. Borrowed money, debt, margin accounts, anything where you're betting with money that isn't yours. Second is speculation. Chasing hot tips, trading frequently, trying to predict short-term market movements. Third is complexity. If an investment requires a PhD to understand or comes with a 100-page prospectus full of jargon, you're probably not the beneficiary of that deal. You're the target. The more complicated something is, the easier it is to hide risk, fees, and traps. Inside it, your mission is ruthlessly simple. Identify what kills investors like you, then build your entire strategy around never going there. If this resonated with you, I'd really appreciate if you'd subscribe. I'm here creating practical, honest content about building lasting wealth without the hype. Now here's a paradox that most people completely miss, and it's one of those counterintuitive truths that separates successful retirees from struggling ones. The less thrilling your investments are after 60, the more thrilling your actual retirement will be. Read that again because it's profound. Boring investments, the kind that make your eyes glaze over when you talk about them, those are the ones that work. They compound steadily, predictably, without drama. They let you sleep soundly at night, instead of lying awake wondering if tomorrow brings disaster. The financial world absolutely does not reward excitement. It punishes it savagely. That adrenaline rush you get from a risky bet, that feeling of being in the game, of potentially hitting it big, that rush is almost always followed by the sickening feeling of watching your nest egg evaporate. It's like trading a comfortable 20-year retirement for 6 months of excitement followed by 2 decades of regret. The journey you're on now isn't about thrills. It's about sustainability, consistency, and peace of mind. But there's an emotional trap that's even more dangerous than greed or fear, and it quietly ruins more retirement portfolios than any market crash ever could. It's envy. Munger called it the dumbest of the 7 deadly sins, and his reasoning is perfect. Think about it. With greed, at least you get to enjoy spending the money. With gluttony, you get to eat good food. With lust, there's pleasure involved. But envy gives you absolutely nothing. You just sit there, stewing in resentment and bitterness, while someone else enjoys their success. You don't even get temporary pleasure. It's pure misery with zero upside. And yet envy is everywhere. Your neighbor buys a Tesla, suddenly your reliable car feels inadequate. Your golf buddy brags about doubling his money in some stock, and suddenly your steady dividend payers seem boring and disappointing. That's the moment decisions go wrong. Write in the comments, "No envy," if you're committed to running your own race without comparing yourself to others. The insidious thing about envy is how it spreads. It's genuinely contagious, like a virus that jumps from person to person without anyone realizing they've been infected. You're doing fine, perfectly content with your steady investments, and then your neighbor pulls up in a brand new luxury car. Suddenly, without any logical reason, your reliable vehicle feels inadequate, or your brother-in-law won't stop talking about some stock that multiplied tenfold, and in that instant, your stable, compounding investments that have been quietly working for you now look like failures. This is the precise moment when everything can unravel. At 60 or older, envy doesn't just cost you money, it's potentially lethal to your financial future because you simply don't have the runway to recover from the stupid decisions it pushes you toward. The clock that once felt generous is now unforgiving. Let me paint you a picture from history that illustrates this perfectly. During the 1990s tech boom, everyone thought Munger and Buffett had lost their minds, while Silicon Valley kids half their age were becoming billionaires overnight. These two old guys were buying insurance companies, candy businesses, furniture stores, and newspapers. Nothing remotely exciting. Nothing that would make you look smart at a cocktail party. People openly mocked them. The narrative was that they'd gotten old, lost their edge, couldn't understand the new economy. They looked foolish, outdated, irrelevant. Then the year 2000 arrived, and the bubble burst with devastating force. Almost overnight, those people who had been mocking Munger and Buffett's boring investments were broke. Their paper billions evaporated. Meanwhile, the insurance companies kept collecting premiums. The candy stores kept selling chocolates. The furniture businesses kept making sales. Munger and Buffett remained wealthy because they never forgot the fundamental principle. The game isn't about beating other people. It's about not losing yourself in the process. Here's a real-world example that brings this home in a painful way. Munger knew a man who was actually doing everything right. He invested reasonably, maintained steady returns, built decent savings over the years, nothing spectacular but solid. Then he started playing golf with a group of guys who got rich trading oil stocks. Week after week, he'd hear these stories about massive wins, incredible returns, life-changing money. He couldn't stand being the small timer of the group anymore. That feeling, that ego-driven need to keep up, drove him to leverage up his entire portfolio and chase the same trades his buddies were making. When oil collapsed, and it always eventually collapses, his portfolio went down with it. Now here's the cruel twist. His golf buddies lost money too, but they still had their careers, their earning power, their time. This man had his retirement to worry about. One envious move, driven by ego and comparison, erased decades of patient, disciplined accumulation. The impact of that single decision haunted the rest of his life, and the hidden truth behind it is simple. He wasn't actually investing anymore. He was trying to prove something. Write in the comments, "My own race," if you understand that your financial journey has nothing to do with anyone else's scoreboard. There's a perspective shift that can completely transform your experience of retirement, and it's counterintuitive. If you genuinely want a happy old age, you should actually root for your friends and neighbors to succeed. I know that sounds idealistic, maybe even naive, but think about the alternative for a moment. Envy makes you miserable every single time someone else does well. That's an exhausting, soul-crushing way to live. Imagine being 80 years old, sitting in your home, still bitter and resentful because someone else had a bigger house or a fancier car or took more exotic vacations. What an absolute waste of a precious, limited life. The best investors Munger ever knew, the ones who actually slept well and enjoyed their money, had almost zero concern for what other people were doing. They didn't obsess over neighbors' bragging rights. They didn't watch CNBC to see who was getting rich this week. They cared about exactly two things: staying solvent and compounding quietly. That mindset, that freedom from comparison, is worth more than any extra percentage point of return you might chase. Now, here's where the behind-the-scenes reality of successful investing gets interesting. Most people only want to talk about their wins. Success stories sell books, fill seminars, and make for great dinner conversation. But Munger understood something profound. Mistakes are far more valuable than successes when it comes to learning. Everyone loves hearing about the winning trades, but almost nobody examines the losing ones. And that's exactly where the real lessons are buried. Decades ago, Munger bought into a company that looked incredible on paper. The numbers were clean, the price seemed cheap, everything checked out superficially. But he didn't think deeply enough about the actual business model, about what the future really held for that company. He made a quick profit and sold, congratulating himself on a smart move. Except it wasn't smart at all. If he'd had the patience and insight to hold that position, the returns could have literally doubled his net worth. That's not exaggeration, it's mathematics. The mistake wasn't buying the company. The mistake was selling too soon, and it's a pattern most investors repeat constantly. Here's the brutal truth about human nature and investing. We do everything backward. We sell our winners too soon and cling desperately to our losers too long. It's completely inverted from what actually works. When something you own goes up in value, your instinct screams at you to lock in those gains, to take the money and feel safe. But that feeling of safety is an illusion that costs you dearly. Selling Coca-Cola after it rose modestly in the 1970s wasn't safe. It was foolish. That stock kept compounding for decades afterward. Anyone who sold early spent years congratulating themselves while they were actually robbing their future self of enormous wealth. The transformation that needs to happen is this. When you find a truly great business, one that will still be making money and serving customers 20 years from now, your job is to sit still and hold it. Fight every urge to get clever or active. Write in the comments, hold quality if you're ready to. Stop sabotaging your winners. If this shifted how you think about investing after 60, hit that like button. It helps more people find this message. The world is absolutely relentless in its attempts to make you do something. Turn on the financial news for 5 minutes and you'll be bombarded with reasons to act immediately. Elections that will change everything, wars that will destroy markets, inflation that will eat your savings, recessions that are definitely coming, or maybe not, or maybe they're already here. It's exhausting, and here's the revelation that changes everything. Almost all of it is noise, pure, distracting noise, designed to keep you glued to screens and feeling anxious. Good businesses survive all of this chaos. Great businesses actually thrive through it. Your job, your only real job at this stage, isn't to outguess every headline or predict every twist in the economic narrative. It's far simpler and far harder. Don't sell the goose that lays golden eggs. For people over 60, this discipline matters exponentially more because you don't have 4 decades for compounding to bail you out of a mistake. You have maybe 1 or 2 decades, and that means every decision to sell something that's working needs to be scrutinized with brutal honesty. Munger witnessed a pattern repeat itself so often it became predictable. Someone holds a reliable, dividend-paying stock for 20 or 30 years. It's been faithful, consistent, boring in the best possible way. Then they stumble across a newsletter or a podcast or a friend with inside information about some new disruptor that's going to change the world. The transformation happens quickly. Suddenly their reliable stock looks ancient and tired. They convince themselves they need to be forward-thinking, innovative, ahead of the curve. So they dump their Johnson & Johnson shares and chase a tech IPO that promises exponential growth. Fast forward just a few years, and they're sitting there genuinely confused about why their dividend income has completely dried up and their account is hemorrhaging value. The mistake wasn't failing to predict the future correctly. Nobody can do that. not consistently. The mistake was abandoning what was actually working in pursuit of what excited them emotionally. Excitement feels like progress, but in investing after 60, excitement is usually the enemy disguised as opportunity. Here's the hidden truth that separates the comfortable retirees from the struggling ones. It's not brilliance that builds lasting wealth. It's endurance. It's the ability to hold on, to sit still, to do nothing when everything around you is screaming that you should do something. If you're over 60, you genuinely can't afford to keep repeating mistakes or learning expensive lessons. The journey at this point requires you to find businesses that will still be making money, still serving customers, still paying dividends 20 years from now, and then hold them. Just sit still. Fight every clever impulse to optimize, rotate, upgrade, or get sophisticated. The market doesn't reward the excitable investor. It rewards the patient one. Munger built extraordinary wealth not by chasing brilliance or having some secret formula, but by being consistently not stupid over a very long period of time. Write in the comments, patience pays. If this mindset is resonating with you and you're ready to embrace the power of doing nothing well. The older Munger got, the more. Clearly he saw a pattern that repeats across every generation. People are far too confident in their own predictions, and the market eventually punishes that arrogance without mercy. He watched this cycle play out for nearly a century. In the 1930s, during the depths of the Depression, people were absolutely certain that prosperity would never return, that America's best days were behind it. They were wrong. In the 1960s, everyone knew with complete certainty that big, stable companies would compound at high rates forever, that you couldn't lose with blue-chip stocks. They were wrong. In the 2000s, the prevailing wisdom was that technology stocks could only go up, that we'd entered a new paradigm where old rules didn't apply. Spectacularly wrong. The hidden truth here is uncomfortable. Confidence feels good. It feels like knowledge. But it's not correlated with accuracy at all. In fact, the most confident voices are often the most dangerously wrong. Here's something that will transform your approach immediately. The world throws investment pitches at you constantly. Opportunities, ideas, hot tips, can't miss deals. You don't have to swing at every single one. You don't even have to swing at most of them. But here's what happens. Most investors can't resist the temptation. They think having an opinion on everything makes them appear smart and informed. They'll confidently tell you where oil prices are heading, what interest rates will do next quarter, how some new startup is going to revolutionize an entire industry. It sounds impressive. It feels like they're on top of things, in control. But here's what they won't tell you, what they probably don't even realize themselves. 90% of those confident opinions will be completely wrong. At over 60, this flaw becomes exponentially more dangerous because your margin for error has essentially vanished. One big wrong opinion that you bet real money on can permanently alter your quality of life. This brings us to one of the rarest and most valuable traits you can develop as an investor, the courage to say, "I don't know." Those 3 words might be the most powerful sentence in your vocabulary. Most people would rather be wrong loudly than silent and wise. Admitting ignorance feels like weakness in our culture, like you're not keeping up or you're somehow less than. But here's the revelation. If you can genuinely admit what you don't know, you won't bet money on nonsense. You'll stick exclusively to areas where you actually have real competence and understanding. At Berkshire Hathaway, Munger and Buffett understood insurance companies deeply. They understood consumer products like Coca-Cola and See's candies, so they bought them and held them. They openly admitted they didn't understand airlines or dot-com stocks, so they simply left them alone, even when everyone mocked them for missing out. That single habit, staying within their circle of competence and admitting everything outside it, saved them from catastrophic disasters more times than anyone can count. The impact of knowing what you don't know cannot be overstated. Write in the comments, Circle of competence if you're committed to only investing in what you truly understand. The transformation that needs to happen immediately is this: stop acting like you need to be an oracle with opinions about every sector, every trend, every country's economy. You don't. You only need to know a handful of things really well and have the intellectual honesty to admit you know nothing about everything else. That's it. That's the entire strategy. And here's a practical filter you can use right now. The more certain someone sounds about the future, the faster you should run in the opposite direction. The world is absolutely full of people desperate to sell you certainty. Financial analysts with their projections, market pundits with their predictions, salespeople with their guaranteed returns. They all sound smart, credible, authoritative, but here's what you need to remember. Not a single one of them will be there to pay your bills when their confident certainty blows up your portfolio. You'll be left holding the bag alone. So when someone starts sounding too sure about what's coming next, recognize that as a massive red flag, not a buying opportunity. Now let me ask you a question that cuts to the heart of whether you're actually investing or just working under a different name. Do you own anything that genuinely works for you when you're not working? Real estate that generates rental income every month, whether you lift a finger or not? Stocks that pay dividends consistently regardless of whether you're awake or asleep? A business stake that keeps earning money whether you show up or not? If your honest answer is no, then you're not really building an investment portfolio. You're just extending your career with extra steps. And here's the brutal reality. Eventually, your energy runs out. Your health falters. The treadmill that you've been running on for decades simply stops. The journey you're on now should be about building ownership stakes in assets that outlast your daily labor, that continue generating income when you can't or don't want to work anymore. That's what true financial independence looks like, and it's absolutely achievable after 60 if you start thinking like an owner instead of an employee. There's a depth of wisdom that comes from living through genuine hardship and for Munger that came from the Great Depression. It left a permanent mark on how he viewed risk for the rest of his life. He watched grown men, smart, capable, hard-working men, lose their entire livelihoods overnight. He saw families forced to move in together because they couldn't afford rent. These weren't failures or lazy people. They were victims of over-leveraging, of borrowing too much, of assuming the good times would roll on forever. The lesson that burned into his mind was simple and stark. You cannot count on good times lasting forever. History moves in cycles. With zero debt, you can weather the bad times. You can survive, adapt, rebuild. But with debt hanging over your head, bad times don't just hurt you, they destroy you completely. The revelation here is that resilience beats brilliance every single time. The people who survived the Depression weren't necessarily geniuses. They were simply durable, frugal, debt-free. Write in the comments, zero debt, if you understand that financial resilience is your greatest asset after 60. If you could distill decades of investment success down to its absolute essence, what would remain? Munger did exactly this exercise, and the answer is beautifully simple. 3 habits. Avoided debt, avoided drama, and avoided dumb people. That's it. No magic formulas, no secret algorithms, no proprietary trading strategies, just subtraction, the power of what you don't do. Debt is poison because it destroys your discipline and magnifies every stupid decision you make. When you're leveraged, a small mistake becomes a catastrophe. Drama, whether it's bad partnerships, toxic relationships, or unnecessary conflict, wastes enormous amounts of mental energy that could be spent thinking clearly about what actually matters. And dumb people, they're genuinely radioactive. Their stupidity spreads like contamination, and if you're close enough, you get caught in the fallout. The transformation here is understanding that it's Better to have a smaller circle of high-quality friends and partners than a large network of questionable connections. Quality over quantity isn't just a cliché, it's survival strategy. But underneath all the investment advice, all the portfolio strategies, all the sophisticated financial planning, there's one mathematical truth that cannot be escaped. If you're not spending less than you earn, nobody can help you. Not Munger, not Buffett, not the most brilliant financial advisor on the planet. The laws of arithmetic are absolutely merciless. They don't care about your feelings, your lifestyle expectations, or your excuses. If more money consistently flows out than flows in, you will eventually go broke. It's not a possibility, it's a certainty. Overspending is the fastest, most reliable way to completely ruin any investment plan, no matter how brilliant it is on paper. At over 60, the consequences of this mistake become sharper and more permanent. You don't get infinite chances to restart. You don't get to blow up your finances and spend the next decade rebuilding. The runway is simply too short. So what is the actual goal here? What are we really trying to achieve with all this careful planning and disciplined restraint? It's not glamour. It's not having the biggest portfolio or the highest returns in your social circle. The real goal after 60 is dignity and independence. It's knowing with certainty that you won't have to beg your children for money. It's knowing you won't be forced to work until you physically can't anymore. That kind of security doesn't come from clever trades or beating the market. It comes from restraint, from discipline, from making the boring choice over and over again. If you can eliminate debt from your life, avoid unnecessary drama, stay away from foolish people, and consistently live below your means, you've already beaten 90% of humanity at the money game. That's not an exaggeration, it's statistical reality. Do those things long enough and compounding will quietly handle the rest. Write in the comments, dignity matters. If you understand that true wealth is measured in freedom, not just dollars. If you've made it this far, I genuinely appreciate you taking this journey with me. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the dangers of envy and overconfidence to the power of just sitting still and letting quality investments do their work. These aren't the flashy, exciting strategies that make headlines, but they're the ones that actually protect and grow wealth after 60. If this resonated with you, if any of this clicked and made you see investing in a different light, I'd love it if you'd subscribe to the channel. I'm here consistently creating content that's practical, honest, and designed specifically for people who want financial clarity without the hype. No get-rich-quick nonsense, no empty promises, just real strategies that work in the real world. And hey, if you made it all the way to the end here, drop a comment and just write dignity and patience. That way I know you stuck with me through this entire conversation, and honestly, it helps me understand what's connecting with you so I can keep delivering content that actually serves you. If this was valuable, go ahead and hit that like button. It tells the algorithm that this message matters, and it helps other people who need to hear this find their way here. Now there's another video right here that dives even deeper into building a resilient retirement strategy. It's the perfect next step after what we just covered. Click on over and let's keep this conversation going. I'll see you there.